Cara from Never Skip Brunch, and today we're talking about choosing new hardware. Spoiler alert, this is what I chose, but I'm going to cover all the design elements and the functional things you need to consider, as well as the different types of handles and what to get. If you've already chosen your hardware and you need help installing it, you can pop into the description below and there's a link to a how-to video all about swapping your knobs to beautiful levers. When choosing new door hardware, there's three things you need to consider. Number one, function, so we're going to talk about whether to choose a lever or a knob. Number two, design elements, things like sheen, color, modern versus classic. And number three, doorknob types. So there's a lot of different doorknobs and you want to make sure you're getting the right one.
This video is sponsored by Schlage.
These are the handles that I chose. They are gorgeous. This gold color is so pretty. They're super sleek and modern, and they also close really quietly, which is nice. I think they're so beautiful, but they have all kinds that fit any style. So if you're not into gold or you don't want something modern, you should go check out their line because they have so many options and you're sure to find one that's perfect for you. So first up, function. Before we can talk about how beautiful they're gonna look, let's talk about the function because after all, the point of a doorknob is that it opens the door. So when you're choosing between levers or knobs, not only is that an aesthetic choice, but it's also going to make it easier or maybe harder in some cases to use it. So reasons you might want a lever over a knob. Number one, if you have members of your family that have arthritis or any kind of wrist issues, levers are actually going to be way easier to open the door. Number two, child-proofing. However you want to child-proof, obviously your decision, but there are going to be different methods, whether you have a knob or a lever door. A lot of times knobs are easier to child-proof because they have those weird plastic covers that go over them, which are not pretty. But you gotta do what you gotta do. It's just the phase you're in. So you might want to consider waiting, or you might want to consider finding a different method of childproofing if you choose a lever. The other thing that plays into choosing lever over knob is actually your door itself. So most interior doors are pretty standard and you can switch between these two types of hardware fairly easily if you have a standard hole. But in some cases, the lever is going to be set closer to the frame of the door, whereas the knob, you have to get all the way around it to turn, if that makes sense. So all you need to know is whether you have a standard door, and if you don't, is it going to look good to have a lever versus a knob, depending on the placement. Number two, this is the fun part, the design elements. So there's basically 5 design elements that you need to think about when you're choosing your hardware. Number one, the most obvious, is the color. Do you want chrome, really classic? Do you want gold, which is kind of bold and modern? Or are you into like the matte black look that's been really popular? So the color is obviously going to play off of the other hardware in your house. If you like mixed metals or you want cohesive, maybe things like your banister, your stair railing, and then the color of the hinges that you have. And that was number 2, was the hinge color. So consider your hinge color. Mine are all painted because the people that built our house just painted right over them once they were installed. So my hinges are all white, so I didn't have to swap those out when switching to gold. It kind of just looks perfect. But if you have chrome hinges and you're having gold hardware, unless you like that mixed metallic look, you're probably gonna have to swap that out. But definitely think about that because it's subtle. You're not gonna see it as much when the door is closed, but there's still color there, and especially if you have black hardware, black hinges can be a really good complement, and design is in the details, so don't skip that. Okay, number 3, the sheen. So just like paint, you can choose from glossy or chromed, satin or matte. So obviously if you're going with a metallic like gold, it doesn't quite look good in matte, it kind of just looks like yellow. So more of a metallic, you're looking at a satin, which is slightly glossy, or a chrome, really glossy. And then if you're doing a color like black, you can look at glossy or matte. Black is really popular right now, so you can go that route as well. Next up, the style and shape of the hardware itself. So there's 2 decisions you have to make. Number one, the back plate, which is the plate that goes behind the knob or lever. This can be round, it can be square like mine is, it can be oblong. So you want to choose the back plate that you think complements your door style and your personal style the best. And then the second thing is you're looking at the actual handle style. So mine is very sleek and modern and minimal, but they have ones with curves or thicker or different kinds of shapes. So back plate and handle combos is something you can really play around with, and a lot of times you can customize depending on where you're buying your handles. This, I just loved the clean look of it. I think it looks so modern and sleek, and the square back plate adds interest versus most standard doorknobs are round on the back, so you don't even really notice it's there, but this is kind of a fun statement. And final design element that you need to consider is your door style. So the style of your door is going to impact what kind of handles you use. If you have something very farmhousey or very traditional, you might want to change it up and put on something very modern to add contrast. That's going to kind of make it look fresher and more interesting, but really, it's up to personal preference, but make sure you're looking at the style of doors you have and considering how your hardware plays into those. Are there lines that are being mimicked or mirrored that makes things look really cohesive? Or is there a handle that you could put on and it would just look terrible, like totally contrast? Make sure to consider the door style when picking your hardware. So the last thing you need to think about is door knob types. So we'll be talking about interior door hardware because exterior door hardware is a totally different situation. Actually, so many cool options for that too. I have their smart lock that's like a keypad. So if you need that, let me know, DM me, and I'll tell you all about mine. It's literally my favorite thing. I can also link it down below. But for interior doors, you kind of have 3 different doorknob types to consider. So first of all, you just have your standard, this is gonna latch, it's gonna open and close, and it's gonna work like a regular door. Just super standard. The second type is locking. So this is gonna be the type of doorknob you're using in your bathrooms, your bedrooms, or any other rooms you want to be able to lock and keep children or friends or other people out. The nice thing about these handles is that all of them can be converted from standard to locking. There's like a little hole and you just add this little pin just on whatever doors you want to be able to lock. So that's really easy with these because you don't have to determine beforehand how many locking versus how many standard. You can take the pin in and out at any time, so it's something you can add to your child's door later if you don't want them to be able to lock it now, but later that they want to lock for privacy, it's something you can add on. So I really love that about these handles, and that's also going to determine how you install them because you obviously need the lock to be on the inside of the door, but I cover that in my other video all about installing door hardware. Okay, so we have standard, locking, and the final type is a dummy or a non-turning handle. A good example of this is French doors like I have, where one of the doors kind of latches into the other one. So the one that's latching is going to be a standard handle, and the one it's latching into, that handle doesn't actually need to turn, so that's going to be a dummy or a non-turning handle. Basically, it's just for aesthetics, just to make the doors look cohesive, but it doesn't actually need to turn. If it did have a latch, it would collide with the other latch and cause problems. So you want to make sure to count up how many dummy handles you need, and then if your standard can't convert to a lock, you also need to take that in consideration when tallying up your hardware. Before you pick your door hardware, think through the function, all of those design elements so it fits your style perfectly, and then make sure you're tallying up the right number of each type of knob so you have exactly what you need and you don't buy the wrong thing. As a final note, most doors are made fairly standard, so when you're buying hardware, especially this piece, you don't really have to worry about whether or not it's going to fit your door. This locking mechanism actually is adjustable, so if your door handle happens to be set a little deeper, you can actually just adjust this and it should fit perfectly, which is why I totally recommend these. Not only are they beautiful, but there's a lot of little options, so it's really easy to install and customize for your space. I hope you liked this video. If you did, pop that thumbs up and hit the subscribe button so you can stay tuned for more fun and fresh design videos just like this. Once you snag your hardware, be sure to pop over to my changing doorknobs to handles video. I talk all about how to swap out your hardware. It's a really quick tutorial and it'll make it so easy to DIY your own hardware swap. Okay, where are we going next? This one? Maybe this one. I'll see you in the next video.